wanted to write a one-person show when I realized how much money I could save. Later, it seemed like a reasonable means of expressing a clarified artistic vision. I started working on the script in the spring of 2018. I wrote a book, which you can all see, called Liend for Everything, that contained an esoteric combination of my research, personal reflections, and lunatic plans. Reading it is probably the literary equivalent of doing drugs in the wrong setting, like doing acid in a truck stop or shooting smack at Christmas. To be clear, I don't ask for forgiveness for my art. It is what it is, in a time and a place far weirder than any of us could have ever predicted. This is a charity production, and all proceeds will be donated to the International Rescue Committee, who provides direct humanitarian aid for victims of disaster and war. Founded at the call of Albert Einstein in 1933, the IRC has a greater than 90% rating on Charity Navigator, and I encourage you all to donate and support them beyond this production, as I also intend to do. I'm going to do my level best to guide the tiller of this performance away from the craggy shores of artistic masturbation and towards the far shores of communal enlightenment. But whatever happens, at least we're helping out children struggling as victims of our global failures. With all of that in mind, the first thing I want to talk about is family, and how you are, all of you in this room, my family. Consider then our long history on this planet as humans. I'm a scientist, but also a pantheist, and also a lunatic. And so there are many things I consider in factoring all of this in. Of all the creation stories, I prefer science the best, because in my opinion, I think it is the most miraculous. One of the more popular creation stories says the universe was created in 7 days. I can't even make a reasonable sandwich in 2 weeks, let alone a universe. People like to make excuses for this time frame, that it's in like God time or something, but they are just that, excuses. We are life clinging to a spinning ball of space rock, people. You can rationalize it with whatever voodoo or hoodoo it takes you to get through the day. But it's more than likely that all of us, every living thing on the planet, evolved from a chemical partnership undertaken in the primordial ooze. It could very well be that we are all of us deviant mutations from but a single cell, one cell who managed to create itself and recreate itself again, beyond all odds, beyond all reason. One cell from which was created the house cat and the tiger shark, David Bowie and longhorn cattle. Humans like to consider ourselves the only sentient life on planet, but this is largely an excuse to be able to eat the other things. To be fair, we eat some pretty weird stuff, kids. Weird, gross stuff. But the fundamental point is we, you and me, and everyone who would ever see or hear this is a family. We began as a single population in East Africa and moved out to all corners of the globe from there. From that single population, we know this because we are all of us 99% genetically identical. The Toba supervolcanic eruption destroyed human life from millions down to as little as 2,000. Some scientists have said as few as 700 people. The genetic bottleneck, think about that. A room full of 700 people. It's like a slow rodeo. Even 2,000 people is like a college graduation. From these hundreds to thousands, scattered over Africa, Europe, and Asia, we are all of us related. Everyone who has ever existed since from these survivors, this family. Humanity is a civilization, but it is also the biggest, most effed up family conceivable. Even so, we are all related. It doesn't matter if you live in China or Bemidji, we're all made of the same stuff. The only reason people happen to look a certain way while being from a certain place is just because of geographic isolation, nothing more. There's no magical genetic racial division. Race was developed by bad scientists to please their slave-owning benefactors. Well, I am done playing that game. There is no time left to spend dividing us. We are spinning out of control on a flaming marble. We are pooping brass on the Titanic. We are all eating more mercury than a 17th century hatter and getting crazier by the day. We are all of us unwilling participants in the greatest age of technology and discovery. You are pioneers into the global age of communication, whether you want to be or not. Welcome to the future. As the sun sets on this side of the planet, it is rising on the other side, and those people are all waking up to make our phones and spacecraft. If and when they rest, we will rise again. It is tiring, but it is what it is. A while ago, I wrote the first third of this play in an entirely different way. For one thing, I gave myself a lot of breaks to drink water and walk around my desk. Also, it was probably much better. How can one speculate on that, truly? But in keeping in the same sort of absurdist, humanist, cosmopolitan theme, It was also probably the single greatest piece of dramatic literature ever written. My daughter, Victoria Elizabeth Lindbaker, deleted that third of a play. Technically, she moved it to the recycling bin, and I deleted it. Whatever the case, it is gone forever. An attempt at recovery revealed a corrupt file. Such is life in the 21st century. Shoulda, coulda, woulda used the cloud. In Real's life, save points are few, and in this IRL save, I met with critical failure. Alas, alack, what is a dramatist to do? Except start over, and here we are! Building tragicomedy again, in a vain but inevitably hilarious attempt to find the ultimate meaning of life, art, and faith. Throw some poop humor in there. Try not to get pink eye. Ruth says that I write in fragments, and she's right, but I also think in fragments, so what's an artist to do? Writing is hard under the best of circumstances, and the 21st century is in no way the best of circumstances. For reals, though, writing is super hard, virtually impossible for most people. If everyone could write compelling literature for a lucrative living, they would, of course, do that. But hardly anyone can write anything compelling, and generally struggle to achieve financial success. Oh, Stephen King, sure. But for every Stephen King, there's 1,000 Jeremiah Liends bleeding over the keyboard for little more than kind feedback. That's really all artists should want or expect by putting pen to paper or electron to screen. Just some nice feedback. It doesn't even have to be good. It was certainly long, but it wasn't really something I liked. Bingo. All net, 3 points. But what normally happens is the existential equivalent to being kicked in the face by a horse, the sort of mental havoc that requires months of recuperation. The $6 annual check for your book sales, for instance. At least it isn't enough to report on your taxes. No tax impact there, kids. Further frustrating matters have occurred recently, notably the rise of QAnon, a loose confederacy of internet dunces, desperate for structure in our churning chaos. They follow the encrypted predictions of an internet entity known as Q, which would all be great had I not firmly established my own secret agent superhero of the same name quite some time ago. Q, who is Quetzalcoatl, who swallowed Quetzalcoatl, is not QAnon. No, kids, we have entered an age of false Qs, to be certain. There I was, a comfortable distance away from the relevance of James Bond and Star Trek The Next Generation, place-setting a Q of my own in literature by publishing the Book of Q, September 11th, 2011. It isn't a perfect novel, certainly. It was written over the course of several years, incorporating a perpetual alternative universe. Among the weird shit that happens, Trump gets nuked by Guy Mancock, lizard people save Seattle, and all life on Earth is almost entirely eradicated by, among other things, a fascist space force, Tom Cruise, and an undead robot. These are the things that are supposed to happen 300 years into our future or so. It was and is a work of art created and centered in futurism, socio-political sustainability, and lasers. It was a work of psychic therapy that helped to purge my impotent rage and loss, turning it into hope and promise. The promise I make then and make every day is to save this world. It is not easy work or rewarding. If we succeed, then we will survive the inevitable collapse of society, economy, and environment. If I fail, well, then we're all relegated to the fossil record. Let the cockroach people enjoy that which we could not. Let the creatures that don't like or need oxygen inherit the earth, and let this piece stand as a swan song into eternity. Let it be known we did not go quiet into that dark night. I fight to save the planet in the most boring possible way these days. I work for a wonderful solar company as an operations support specialist in charge of interconnection. Every day, I connect clients to the electrical grid through the power of paperwork. We offset an average of 50 annual tons of carbon a day, virtually every day of the week. I work remotely from my home, which is very nice in many ways and difficult in others. I'd rather be using theater to save the world, which is what we're all doing here. In the latter half of graduate school, I took classes in project management, and I didn't do very well in them, but I learned a lot from them. And right off the bat, I learned the difference between projects and operations. Projects have a specific timeline, beginning, middle, and end, while operations are the daily tasks required to run a business. I remember saying at the time, probably out loud, "That sounds awful, I would hate that." What I've learned is that the universe listens to us sometimes. It doesn't listen to our prayers, it doesn't listen to our pleas. But sometimes it listens to our proclamations and seeks to cause us pain because of them. Sometimes Sometimes the universe hears you say something in a moment of weakness, as a desperation and a cruel joke, and the universe will take that joke seriously. Very seriously. So I've taken to avoid casually saying things on a basis. That's also why we're going to hear. I'm going to dump all this nonsense at you and into the universe and then crawl into a bunker for the rest of the year. Ha-ha! I feel very lucky to have my job. My work is mundane, but I get to work every day with Andrew Clemens, who is a gorgeous sex god and always has been. So we do it, the solar. We orchestrate the grand interconnection and spite the utilities for their shenanigans. Clemens lives in Ohio with his wonderful family, and we both understand how important our work is to trying to save the planet. I'm going to tell you all now how the planet is probably going to die and take us all with it. There are a lot of factors and models in science. The ocean is getting warmer and more acidic, and at some point, when it becomes warm and acid enough, zooplankton and phytoplankton will go extinct. They will lack the strength it requires to make their shells, and they will go extinct. First, the oxygen in the ocean will be lost and die, and then the atmosphere will lose oxygen and die. Oh, not everything will die, certainly. Plants will be fine, more than fine, with all the carbon flying around. We, humans, will not be. Humans, as well as any land animal that requires oxygen, will perish in an extinction level event not seen since the dinosaurs. It will be as if the nitrogen got turned up at the dentist's office. I hope. Without oxygen in it, there will still be air. It just won't have the things that we need to keep us alive. We will all get confused and tired and sleepy and lay down and die in the billions. I've worked out a few ways to survive, but I'm only going to share it with you at the very end, so you better just get comfortable. I will take some time after this spiel to let you stretch your legs and fiddle with your candy. Did I mention there isn't intermission? Because there isn't. My goal is a tight hour and a half, and if you will all just sit there obediently and silently, we might even clear an hour 20. Why, you ask? Well, good question. Basically, it's about ensuring that the piece is a qualified full length while also nestling it into the niche of Hollywood productions, which have trained us all to enjoy stories roughly an hour and a half in length. The human mind can only take so much time to focus on any one thing, and if there's lots of things all complex and confusing and scary, well, let's just shoot for the hour and a half. We don't want to let those Pulitzers swine off too easy. I've developed what some people may consider a toxic fixation with the Pulitzer Prize in drama. For one thing, everything is toxic. You can die from drinking too much water. With that said, Joseph Pulitzer sucked poops in hell, and I don't care who knows it. I thought you were going to drag me to hell once, Joe. Once. But it was only a train after all. Well, your drama contest sucks. They don't even send you a 100-word feedback form or a thank you email. No, don't use electrons on that trash. We've got to keep saving up for Lin-Manuel Miranda's next opus. You know when Lin-Manuel Miranda's going to write something better than Hamilton? The 21st of never! Put it on your calendars! It's right next to where you can put my Pulitzer win. No, I pay the $50 in registration, and I send the 6 copies of the script, and I produce a DVD for it and mail it to the office in Columbia, and they don't even consistently confirm they received it. They probably put on gloves to carry it to the trash. I bet they don't even open it most times. My postage coming from anywhere but on Broadway puts it at the bottom of the incinerate with extreme prejudice pile. The board does a bunch of blow, and then they all talk about Hamilton, and they give it to whoever can afford to be on Broadway. At least Portland is keeping in the game, keeping it weird enough to risk doing a one-night-only global premiere one-man show. Just to stay in the game, you know? Just to stay in the goddamn game. It's only $150 in registration, printing, and envelopes and postage. Oh, of course, then there's the thousands of dollars I lose putting on the plays. But fuck that noise, you know? Fuck it. Say it again for the kids in the back. I often wonder about the greatest artists and where they were in their life when they were creating their greatest pieces of art. Like, did Leonardo da Vinci ever look at the Mona Lisa and go, bullshit, and throw his crayons to the ground and cry? Or is that just me? There are many more talented artists than myself that have already killed themselves or are otherwise dead. But then you have to consider that they're actual dramatists or a dying profession of extinct creative trading in a fragmented marketplace. And then you have to consider that continuing to invest yourself into this collapsing star may generate negative impacts. Ongoing negative impacts. So we trim it down, we reduce costs. When you think about it, in the entire realm of production possibilities, a one-person, one-night only show that receives at least one press announcement is the absolute minimum requirement. So to you, dear reader, not you, the lovely audience members in attendance, if you were on the board for the Pulitzer Prize 2020, I have your entire family in a storage container underwater. Just give me the prize, and I'll give you the location of the container and the key for the padlock. We will forgive and forget these past grudges, and I will start trying to beat Eugene O'Neill in earnest. Old dead Eugene O'Neill, who would have gotten more than 4 if not for the chronic alcoholism. Albie was your ringer, but that crusty fuck took his eyes off the prize. Enjoy, if you can. I wrote a book called Jeremiah Liend for Everything, and if I were lazy, I would just read it to you. But that would probably be super boring. And we would definitely be here a lot longer than an hour and a half. The thing is, it would also probably be super boring, because I write things differently for people to read than I write for them to hear or see. Then there's the consideration of the formatting and the transmission of information. With any luck, I'll have copies here, huh? If I get my ducks in rows. To murder and eat them. That's what getting ducks in rows means, to murder and then eat them. Or to herd them to someplace to eat bugs, I'm not sure. I could look it up, but I'm not going to. See, isn't this a lot better than me reading from some boring book? Rather, I would like to think of this piece as something of an apology for the book, and also a shameless plug for it. Because Stephen King, I'm not, but there is and was only be one Jeremiah Liend. Lots of kings in the phone book. Bible too. But we've got Jeremiah coverage there as well. I went this really long time not knowing what happened to the prophet Jeremiah at the end of his life, and then I read that he was stoned to death in Egypt by his own people. So if I can avoid that, I am already more successful than the nearest Judeo-Christian cultural icon. Some of you might be thinking about Jeremiah Johnson, who killed people and ate their livers, but don't, unless it's that film with Robert Redford. Then you're allowed, but only for this time that it takes me to drink water and walk around my desk. Not even going to do stage direction for that. This is going to be one of the densest scripts in known history, if nothing else. High school kids doing monologues in high schools you can say fuck in are going to have a field day. I'm just kidding. No one's going to do this play. That's the other great thing about this model of production, is that I know it's not going to be butchered by some repertoire in Alabama or something. Not that I'm necessarily against pole barn theater, of course, but there is a brand of unsustainable, non-professional performance that I am against. I, of course, speak of the Grand Ole Opry. We're picking all sorts of pointless fights with this piece. I'm calling that now. Hee-haw, we come for you. If you want to watch a show where the boy meets the girl and they can't be together because things are challenging in the world, but unlikely circumstances allow them to come together and be happy forever, watch some Disney. I am not here to spoon-feed you. I am here to awaken you. I am here to revive you. I am here to inspire your courage and bolster your spirit. I cannot give you massages. They took my license away. Those monsters. My friend Jesse Whiting once famously said that I'm a monster with player levels, and I believe it. I believe it still. That man is a total monster, if you're a pizza. A lot of you people probably don't know who Jesse Whiting is, and that's a shame. His distant uncle, Frank M. Whiting, was a distinguished professor of theater at the University of Minnesota who eventually developed a summer showboat program that eventually transitioned into the Centennial Showboat, that eventually transitioned into us, the Bemidji Swashbucklers Guild, attempting to manage said showboat. That's an entire section of Jeremiah Liend for Everything, but I'm not going to go into it, except to say that we still don't have command of a showboat. It was a damn fine plan, too. It worked in conjunction with the semi-secret unicellular shadow arts organization of which many of us are a part. Who knows? You could save the planet with theater, but it would be hard. I did my master's research on how to do it, and that's another thing in Jeremiah Liend for Everything, the Liend Art Sustainability Scale. It's a table of production factors that can be applied to any production to establish a sustainability score that can be evaluated and improved upon with over time. It breaks down 20 factors into environmental, social, and economic considerations, with a perfect score being a positive 60 and the worst possible score being a negative 60. After creating the scale and applying it to a couple of productions now, I can say that it isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be to get a perfect score. You basically need to produce a flawlessly sustainable original ballet, which I'm working on, but it's hard. This show will get a pretty great score in many ways and fail spectacularly in others. Ideally, a person could not only save the planet making theater, but also pay their bills. Ha ha. All while bettering society. That is the brass ring on our flaming carousel. But at this juncture in history, I'm just holding on very tightly and working my angle of attack. The Liend's art sustainability is called the LASS, and if your production lasts more than a year, you score it yearly to produce a Lassie, because acronyms are meant to be sassy. None of this could be considered research, but the actual research is sound. I have read many things, considered many factors, developed a structure and a method. If people were to buy into it, it could revolutionize the way that we produce and share theater, but also I might be more interested in creating a pressurized home in the event of mass hypoxia. Unfortunately, my education is in this bullshit. So, let's all just do what we can, just do what you're good at, do it for something good, and maybe we can all just synergize our way out of this disaster, because I truly feel we're really only just a few years away from functional immortality. That may sound crazy, but a doctor recently claimed the human lifespan will soon be 1,000 years old. And they didn't understand why when they made that it was such an insane claim. And frankly, I don't either. I mean, in the very near future, you're just going to be able to print out universally compatible donors and have them just standing by to replace the bad ones. If things get really bad, we just zing your head off and attach it to a donor body. And then you're good to go for like another 100 years or whatever. Side effects may include total insanity. I'm keeping an eye on an Italian doctor named Canavera who was arranging for the first human head transplant. He had a volunteer all lined up, but that all fell through, and I understand he's working in China at this point. He believes that the sharpness of the blade was the thing preventing spinal tissue interconnection. I think it's going to require some sort of graphene latticing or other likewise cool super future stuff. But whatever the solution is, we're close to being unafraid of death and or disease. There are already cures for cancer. There's not a universal cure for all cancers yet, but I know several people who have undergone treatment to have complete remission and or elimination of the cancer. It is miraculous, but for the terrible cost associated with it. People who can afford insurance and treatment survive, and those that cannot do not. Survival based on insurance and crowdfunding. What a dystopian nightmare to so casually wander into our lives. Make no mistake, the social contract is a fallacy woven by social scientists to keep you enslaved. There is no social contract. Capitalism consumes until there is nothing left to consume, until there is no more profit to be had. The apex predator of capitalist systems are the corporations, and they represent the structures of wealth owned and managed by 1% of the population to the tune of $280 trillion. In addition to inserting themselves into every moment of our waking lives, these companies are also responsible for 70% of global carbon emissions. Recycle all you want, but unless we raise every corporate structure to the ground tomorrow, probably have until 2050 or so before we're beyond the point of total extinction. Right now, I'm wagering on the crazy mysticism of barely understood Mesoamerican consumer gods. Because according to all scientific estimates, we're doomed in half, kids. Meanwhile, we could and should stop using fossil fuels tomorrow. We should localize bus and electric vehicle garages. We should create a functional electric flying cars. We should use a clean grid to remove and convert atmospheric carbon into inert byproduct. We should create a genetic arc. We should get off this planet just in case we do everything else right and Wyoming explodes. We are not ready for Wyoming to explode, nor are we prepared for a magnetic solar event. There was an incident where the sun threw some flares of magnetism at Earth, and at the time telegraph wires exploded and telegraph boxes exploded. It destroyed every electrical circuit on the entire side of the planet, when these circuits were meant to withstand a lot. Whatever side of the planet gets exposed to a subsequent solar event is going to be thrown back into the technological dark ages. It is the equivalent of the electromagnetic pulse from a thermonuclear device with any of the rapidly expanding hydrogen and flame and death. Your phone, your car, your television, your computer, all fried into nothingness forever. An emergency assessment done by the government estimated that it would take at least 4 months to restore the basic functions of the electrical grid. We are not prepared for that, or for Wyoming exploding, or a massive space object striking us at insane speeds, which almost happened a few days ago. Dinosaured, all because we are not given the tools to defend ourselves. We are all of us victims of mass piracy. The smartest thing pirates ever did was create governments. Why spend all that time looting and burying booty on the high seas when you can just declare yourself the sole ruler of a continent inhabited by people for the last 20,000 years or so? You don't even need a boat, just a building with a flag over it, and the ability to defend this area up to and including genocide. Perhaps Wyoming should explode. But no, please don't. Let me tell you about Jeremiah Liend for everything. At first, it was a crazy political theory. I have quite a few crazy political theories, and I've experimented with them to varying degrees of success. One idea that I never fully deployed was the concept of running as a write-in candidate for every eligible office in the nation. Residency would, of course, make me ineligible for the vast majority of those offices. But then a promise would be to move to wherever asked for Jeremiah Liend the most. Whoever wrote me in the most. Maybe it's a distressed farming community in Idaho, in desperate need of some swashbuckling musicals. Maybe it's a rough and tumble coastal town in Louisiana, recovering from the largest oil disaster ever experienced, in desperate need of some sort of security. Maybe it's a town that needs a mayor or a judge or a sheriff that isn't beholden to corporate interests and willing to go to those places where they're asked for the most, forever searching for the election that will bring him home. Compelling episodic television, perhaps. But the reality of moving around based on a vote is chaotic at best. Also, residency restrictions make me ineligible for all but a handful of legitimate offices. Also, I've committed myself never to spend any money trying to get elected. This is both because I believe our current political system has been poisoned by the love of money above all else, and because I don't have any. On the books, I'm probably in the hole quite a bit, so I'm not going to spend money losing elections. Oh, thank you. I don't think a person should or have to spend a whole lot of money to get their ideas out there, you know? The concept of information virility is familiar and yet undefined. And it isn't always the product of something intentional. It can come from anywhere and be any media, but some element of it allows it to travel through the zeitgeist of our age. Gather enough momentum, and any mold could be our planet's undoing. Heed these words, gentle mind slaves. Later, the idea of Jeremiah Liend for everything came to me as the ultimate advocacy. Unilateral, universal, unitardinal advocacy. You sell batteries for a living? Good for you. What do you do for work? You assemble electrical circuit boards. That's wonderful. What do? You assemble tacos and taco salads for people? That sounds fantastic. When can I eat those things? What do you like to do for fun? You like to eat mushrooms and read comics. What comics? What was it like growing up for you? You were blind for the first 5 years of your life. Tell me about that. What do you think about this crazy thing called life, anyhow? 42? I read that book. Jeremiah Liend for everything means that everything is for you. It is all done by and for and to communicate with you. Whoever you people are. Whoever you weird fucking people are with your phones and your mints, watching or reading this wherever you are, all dozen or so, scattered between all those possible possibilities. Christ on crack cocaine, I wish I would have studied math more when I was in school. What a dumb regret to have. Here I am using simple math and cursive every day, just wishing I had enough XPs to build my solar dirigible. The arts. The fine arts. The fine liberal arts. There's chaotic, and then there's applied fine liberal arts. I had considered a format, that first format, where in the first third I would tell you who I was, and in the second I would tell you about my dreams, and in the third I would tell you about my plans of how to affect those dreams. And I'm still attempting to achieve that goal while also trimming down the overall length by omitting stage directions to move around my desk and drink water. And by doing that, I think we are now concluding this first third. But, and this is all relative, I suppose, what I wrote might be insane word salad. The entire rambling prose may sound like incomprehensible insanity, and no single point or tangible value will or has been secured. I'm willing to take the risk at this point. My reputation isn't that spectacular, but all of my fans are dyed-in-the-wool badasses. My enemies are all autocratic butt sniffers. So what am I to lose in explaining my ethos to you in a reasonably paced and sized live presentation? No intermission! I know you want to go to the bathroom and have a reluctant poop, but you can't, all right? Poop your pants as you must, but we are going to get through this show. I'm a busy guy. I don't just do art. Art is my passion, not my vocation. I do this in order to have something to show for my time living through these weird events. Moving forward into the ad hoc second act, I want you to keep in mind that most of what I say here is probably free and on the internet. Of that, most of it will be read by robots. And so, to you, dear robots, I need $500 trillion as soon as possible. As we transition into my dream section, I want to take that oversized $500 trillion check with us. I want to remind us that economy and society are just entirely made-up systems. We make them up on the fly, and if they're strong enough to be enforced with violence, they succeed. What is unstable or weak falls. But the economy, for instance, is entirely made up. There is no gold standard. It's a made-up computerized system on a system of servers somewhere. If tomorrow the stock market crashes, the contents of our wallets are useless. You can scrape your window with a strong enough credit card, I guess. You can chop up the last of the world's cocaine if you like. Normal people don't know how to run society, and when those startled freaks all jump out of their windows, everything will grind to a halt. Walmart stores, for all their corporo-fascist glory, wouldn't last 2 missed paychecks before outright revolt. They would line the Waltons up against a wall and eat them one by one. Let the people know what $140 billion in meat tastes like. I know there are those who say that that would never happen and that people would come together and share resources and overcome hardship through unity and strength. But that is some rose-colored bullshit, which typically means your bull is sick. Art by Zach Holmes. Humanity, I love you. But you are one of the most dysfunctional families in all of known existence. All through the animal kingdom, you see examples of creatures working together to build these amazing, incomparable, complex structures. Oh, humans can build interesting structures, but they rarely cooperate to do so. They consume. Our consumption will be our undoing unless something is done. I dream that the world will unite. We are currently a broken conglomeration of nation-states created and divided by colonial interests to manage colonial global production. You poison banana workers with fungicide to keep bananas on shelves. You let families dig in the mud for diamonds until they die. You let children dig underground for our phone batteries. You let slaves carry our chocolate. No more. No more to these crimes when a world united and empowered can see and prevent these atrocities. True global sustainability is only achieved through true global unity. It requires the dismantling of the nation-state as an arbitrary entity in global decision-making. The United Nations is not a functional global agency. Their programs and efforts have failed to deliver the solutions required to provide for a just planet. Their representation cannot enforce or prevent atrocity, taking only the safest of measures to acknowledge when these atrocities occur. These crimes against humanity occur everywhere, and no nation is perfect in their delivery of safety from them. To unify the globe, you need a person or group that can speak in every language and compel those who hear it to take action. To unify the globe would require a revolution heretofore unconceived, let alone witnessed. Our entire age is crazy pants off the wall cuckoo, but the last century. I poop on humanity a lot, sure, but we can also fly and transport organs and make the deaf hear and the blind see. When we work together, there is no limit to that which we can achieve. I have a few functional ways to create this sustainability, but the most comprehensive is the idea of a global union. A union in the traditional sense, a collective of like-minded people in a bargaining capacity, in which any person could be a member, provided they're willing to adhere to the will of the union. This union would recognize itself before any nation, corporation, or individual. Such a union, globalized, could functionally retaliate against corporations that practice unsustainably. Through the power of boycott, protest, and walkout, any corporation could be brought to its knees within a matter of weeks. The courts have no incentive to punish corporations. Their tax dollars pay their wages. They are not motivated to quickly distribute justice because they are all on salary. It is called nursing, as if from a teat. But that teat is poison, my friends. That teat has enslaved us to the 40-hour work week, even while throwing us under the bus. It is a system that allows children to be slaves to chocolates, lithium, and sex. It is a system that still puts people underground to find materials we don't really need, we just want them. Which is true of most things. We don't really need them, we just want them. Which is fair, I guess, considering that we've all been trained over the course of our lives to be lifetime consumers. The system is built to kill us and to make money along every step of the way. But we could kill those systems back. We could, if we wanted to, tear down these failed power structures and build new ones, better societies with better rules and just enforcement. I wish there was a better format than theater to express my ideas. Virtually any art would probably be a better format, and I include dance in that. I wish I was a better dancer, but all I have are 2 years of professional studio dance. What use is that, you ask? Well, someday you may have to waltz. Someday you might have to jazz square your way through some train wreck of a musical. Really, it's more that I wish theater education was better, more comprehensive. Which is not to say that I have not learned from great minds, but rather that those minds have all been formed within a system that's doomed to educational failure and collapse. If I had my own theater department, it would necessarily be interdisciplinary. It would be studied in conjunction with another major that would utilize a student's talent and focus. So, if you are studying to be a nurse, for instance, I believe, and also a theater artist, I believe that being in theater will make you a better nurse. You could engage a curriculum that focuses on how medicine is represented in theater over time. Or you could use the important things learned from working intensely with a group or partner to translate that into patient and group relationships. Or, if you're studying to be a police officer, you can learn about the noble and lauded tradition of forensic technique through active participation in musical murder mystery dinner theater. But if I could have any one interdisciplinary partner with theater, it would be business. I think the college does its students a great disservice by not requiring at least one business class that at the very least explains how to do your taxes, create a budget, plan for insurance and retirement. Oh, it would be quite the popular class, to be sure. But I was forced to take a class in undergrad where they made us pay tuition dollars to find some way to be healthier, journal the process, and submit the end results. I was told, and I believe it, that a previous student did his project on walking to a Chinese restaurant every day. I went to the Chinese restaurant. It was not worth walking to. Instead, I did my project on drinking more water. I had a water intake journal. I cited the reasons why drinking water was good for you and how so many people lack proper access to safe water, or if they do, they don't end up drinking enough of it. I hated that class and I mailed in every ounce of attention to it, and in the end I got a C, and that stupid grade took away my cum laude. Those fuckers. Sorry. Not sorry, those fucks. To make a class mandatory and not make one mandatory that explains how to file your taxes and afford to pay off your massive loans. It didn't used to be a zero-sum game because college wasn't a make-or-break proposition. In theory, you could find a useful degree, study, get a job in your field, and pay back your loans without paying endless interest for your entire life. But now, there is no margin for error, because you're starting your career at least $30,000 in the hole. You can try to work in parallel to going to college, but you're going to fail classes, because you cannot both work and study and sleep adequately. So then you're going to push your 4-year degree into 5 or 6, and that $30,000 into more and more. I hope that we can find out new ways of understanding the world and living inside of it. The way we understand the world and explain it to one another is a construction that has developed at least over the last hundreds of thousands of years. Civilization, as a whole, is a geologically infinitesimal blip on our planetary record. It seems long and boring to us out here in the field, but our lives are but hummingbird farts in the wind. Cross-stitch that on a pillow. I dare you. Society is just an idea. We're constantly creating and recreating based on popular ideas. We say we have the authority to be someplace because we can arrive there. We lay claim to natural resources that were gifts to everybody, now claimed for a privileged few. Who owns the land, the water, and why they do it is an inconsistent and sprawling milieu of nation-states and neo-monarchies. Sure, Great Britain has a parliament. It also has a royal family and a House of Lords, and they are in power simply because they were born into that power. Whatever cultural value you can place on that, there's a disturbing trend of paying a small group of incredibly rich people to remain rich. I may be tossing word salad at the problem, but you get it. Kings, really? You're going to come at me with the idea that God, or whatever, bestowed inherited value on you as a person and your family. Because from where I'm standing, we're all meat. We're all just meat getting scary skeletons around. And you're going to come at me with the idea with a king, and you were only that what? Because you were born once? Poops to that, dude face. Poops on that. Say what you will for our failed pirate democracy, at least our fascists have terms. Most of them. The others will die soon enough. I was just reading about Harriet Tubman the other day, and apparently for an entire month she prayed to God that her master stop trying to sell her and thus take her away from her family. She prayed to God that he turn his heart away from this act and let her remain with her family. At the end of that month, when he still sought to sell her, she changed her prayer to say, Lord, if he cannot be turned, then kill him and get him out of my way. And within the week, he was dead. Harriet Tubman said she regretted that prayer, but I think it provides an interesting what if. But what if it's easier for God to kill a person than to change their heart? I think that's a beautiful idea. It takes away from the idea of an all-powerful God to say that no matter what, our heart is our own. It is our will, the heartbeat to which we wage our daily wars. Whether Harriet Tubman killed her master with God magic remains to be seen. But what I will tell you is that we should put her on some sort of money. That's the best way to remember her. But no, we need to end slavery one of these days. I saw a picture of a child hauling this massive sack of cocoa in an article that explained that virtually all of our chocolate employs slave labor at some point to harvest the necessary amount of beans. I love chocolate, but I would never eat that shit again if we could stop that awful stuff from happening. End slave chocolate. I know a lot of my ideas seem crazy and you never consider investing in them, letting alone investing the time it takes for me to explain them to you. But as it happens, you're a captive audience, and so let me tell you about my solar airship. We're moving away from the term solar dirigible with the vis-a-vis Nazis. But that's the whole reason I'm doing the giant airship, you see, is to beat the Nazi record, creating an airship larger than the Hindenburg. Because it's a lot more effective than punching them. Punch a Nazi on TV, okay. Beat a Nazi record, fantastico. But the solar airship is actually already being theorized and planned, including a proposed mission, a manned mission to Venus. NASA created a proposal called Havoc that envisioned a spacecraft that would fly to Venus, detach a dropship that would fall into the atmosphere, and then inflate a solar airship that would keep the craft above the clouds of crushing acid for a months-long mission. And then they would rocket out from the bottom of it, return to their dropship, and return to Earth. NASA has a snappy video of it if you ever want to search Havoc NASA. Why Venus, you ask? Well, lots of reasons, I guess. You would stay up there in the clouds forever, I guess, would be the plan, and what I would try to do at least, would be to seed the clouds with spores and bacteria that would make the planet habitable. There have been similar proposals to inhabit Venus, but also the current proposal most popular is living in cloud cities. Me, I want to poop into those clouds. I want to turn that acid basic and precipitate the atmosphere into delicious, non-melting me water. Oh, that water would have bacteria in it, to be sure, but that would be okay. Because that bacteria would be in me too. That bacteria and I would be pals. If bacteria didn't do it, I bet spores would. Get some tardigrades to move all this around. This all sounds crazy, sure, but what was really crazy is not thinking you're going to be mole people living on Mars. I don't want to be in a space helmet for the rest of my life. I want to know that the long-term efforts of my function of my efforts is another habitable planet in our solar system. Because too much atmosphere is a much better problem to have than none at all. If I have to be entirely honest with you, I think that Elon Musk is creating a long-term range to kill thousands of rich people. At least, I hope that's his plan. He's not doing so great with the electric car revolution. We're all still eating petroleum dick to get to and fro, like plebs. Oh, sure, I'd love a Tesla. How much does that cost? Oh, God. And how long will it last in sub-zero temperatures? I see. Well, no, I'm not going to pay that. Sorry. Come to think of it, who are you? Get out of here! Get out now while you still can! I think if you put enough carbon-collecting solar airships into the upper atmosphere, we could undo some pretty significant carbon damage. It would help the transition from fossil fuel-based air travel. Last year, we dumped 859 million tons of CO2 into our atmosphere, which you can understand why then offsetting a daily 50 tons becomes kind of laughable when you consider just how much fucking carbon it takes to get us to and fro. My solar airship is carbon negative. It travels slower, maybe. But my greatest vision is to own a theater of my very own to do weird theater in it. It wouldn't have to be huge. I've designed reasonably sized theaters, but it is hard, apparently. You need millions of dollars most of the time, consistent audiences, frothing and churning chaos of producing one of the more difficult arts on a nightly basis. But mine, it and managed by me, not by a committee of wealthy people with loads of time on their hand, not by a faceless corporation trying to grab as much money as they possibly can, not even an artistic director who couldn't find vision with both hands and fabulous drugs. I've even gone to the trouble of outlining a non-original Pulitzer Shakespeare retrospective rotating non-original season. I managed to wedge some shameless plugs in there, sure. But it's all about grants. It's all about writing a compelling cover letter. It's about doing your level best to not look like a complete and utter lunatic on paper. Never give them a paper trail, kids. That's free advice that could save your life. Every theater program should have a mandatory grant writing class. Everyone that doesn't is throwing their graduates naked into the streets. Sink or swim, the choice is yours. If I could go back to 1998 with the knowledge of hindsight, I would have made some better educational choices. I would have majored in theater and business, and crucially, I would have actually gone to my classes. For anyone considering going back to college, let me tell you how I did it after a sprawling 17-year brawl with higher education. I went to class, I read the assignments, I completed and turned in my work and tests. That's it. There is no secret to succeeding in higher education. People will tell you how to schedule your days or frame your study or schedule things, but that is all unnecessary gilding of a pristine lily. Go to your classes, read and review the assigned materials, complete the work and tests. Repeat. Repeat until you are a doctor. And then the program becomes go teach your classes, assign reading and review materials, assign and grade work and tests. Repeat. We may not need no thought control, but everyone should get an education. I don't like jumping through the hoops of college, and that's why I failed so often, until I realized once again that I truly do enjoy learning. To be able to learn something new is not only to expand your knowledge, but also your window of possibilities. If you think you know everything you need to, you're wrong. I don't know anything. That's supposed to be the magical secret password to infinite wisdom or something, to the ability to admit that in the grand scheme of things, everything you can know is virtually fuck all. Pulled back to the distance of ultimate knowledge and mastery, any one person's efforts are meaningless. You cured polio. Ha ha! No, you didn't. You only thought you cured polio, but in fact you just delayed it by 100 years or so. Anything you can imagine doing is probably going to be contained to what has been accurately called a light blue mote of dust in a canvas of infinite black. Yet here we are, desperate for an intermission that will never come. There will be no intermission! I would be remiss in my job as the star of a one-person show not to at least mention my work, because you may not be familiar with it. I could be a total stranger to you, and you've somehow wandered in here or pirated this script or this footage, and you've somehow committed yourself to make it this far, and you have no clue who Jeremiah Liend is. Well, I'm sorry for you. Let me explain. You see, I was going to spend a whole lot of time with me explaining to you who I was, but if everything works out how it's supposed to, I can tell you about my work, and that will explain who I am in theory. When I first approached theater, I did it as a performer. Theater is tailored to entice performers who, in my experience, perform for a myriad of reasons. Maybe it's the not enough money. Maybe it's the total anonymity. Maybe it's the soul-crushing self-loathing. For whatever reason, theater people are often actors. Acting and learning stagecraft are the tandem skills that guide most theater departments in schools. Beyond the theater program, it's been my experience that relatively few graduates actually perform for a living. Sometimes they do something else entirely. They sell insurance. They have a desk job. They teach. Whatever they do, I can assure you that they rely on their experience in theater to succeed. The whole of college is attempting a hand-fisted drive towards group work, what with every person in the world needing to work with a group at some point in their lives. But the whole of college has failed in that effort, because just because you put people in a group does not mean you actually teach them how to work together. On the contrary, the majority of groups that I've been forced into are a conglomerate of slacker jack-off fuck-ups. But I've loved 99% of all of the theatrical and film cast and crews I've been a part of. Oh, then there's that 1%, which takes 90% of your tolerance in order to work with, sure. But for the most part, people who do theater do it because they love it, and that shared love of something tends to guide even the most mediocre productions to opening night and beyond. The thing is, even a mediocre amateur production should still be considered an outstanding success. These are not professionals, these are amateurs or students learning the craft. Going to an amateur college production is like paying to attend homework. You have to trust in the ability of the director, the professors, and the technicians to make sure that you're not sitting through some nonsense hour-and-a-half show where they don't even have a goddamn intermission. Probably should have put it on the posters, but who prints posters any days now? Why, Unless it's to put it up in my office. That's why, yes. Came around to that answer pretty fast. In terms of my work, I generally consider myself an absurdist postmodernist with hints of futurism and tragic comedy, while also considering myself quite boring. If this all falls apart on the one and only night I do it, it's because I don't have the energy to write all this stuff down, let alone edit for hours. No, Mozart didn't edit The Marriage of Figaro. He just farted it out of his brain as one single glorious piece, and then idiots performed in it. Those idiots. It occurs to me that I will never be able to remember any of this, probably. Jesus, how does someone write a compelling one-person show anyway without boring everybody to tears? You have to be pretty on your game to be able to pull something like that off without a prompter or a wig mic or something. Pulling a Brando. Did you know that Marlon Brando never learned any of his lines? Oh, no. Now, earlier in his career, he would have cue cards put around the set, and then later in life, he would adopt a wig mic. A wig mic is a miniature earpiece into which he would have all of his lines fed. It's one really clever way to weasel out of learning your lines, but out here on the field, that sort of thing has got to be impossible. Just to let you in on the process a little, we're somewhere around page 17 of the total 100-page work, and depending on how timing works out, we're closing in on the end of my ideas section. I think we've covered some really important topics, and I hope you think so too. Don't get comfortable, though. I'm going to really wow you with these last few ideas, because everything so far has been pretty above the board, and to some people pretty obvious and boring. But there's a lot going on in my mind on a minute-by-minute and hour-by-hour basis. The problem is never writing, when you can just open the sluice into the mind dump. They call it the flow. I don't like to think of writing as a flow. I prefer to think of writing as a constant uphill climb to the top of a volcano into which I am throwing myself. Hey, let me just take a moment to break down whatever fourth wall might still be standing and really thank you all for making it this far in the work. No matter what the format, that is going to be a commitment, to keep tabs on whatever the hell I'm talking about for such a long, arduous, boring time. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. At this point, I'm picking up on the writing within the 30-day performance window, and I have no idea what crazy shit I've been rambling about so far. I'll never be able to memorize any of it, but I'm fairly certain I can record it and project it, with the ultimate failure being to read the entire script to the audience, unseen to the audience in a lead-lined box. Lead is very bad for you. Don't try to eat it. This is a sort of practical know-how I hope will carry this rambling file of artsy farts. But I mean, even Victor Hugo went 3 years late on his Hunchback book, I think, if the internet is to be believed. I guess it has to be at this point. I am no Mozart, I'll give you that, critics. I am no Thompson, or Emerson, or Lake, or Palmer, or whoever. I am Jeremiah Lind for everything. I am for you, and 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 everyone they all knew, and everyone you all knew, and everyone who came before us and since. We are the all-singing, all-dancing meat of the universe. Take humanity at our worst, we are monsters, but at our best and in our hearts, I think there lurks a greater being, something with courage and resolve and righteous fury. This will be my final live performance, such as it is. I can't perform in front of people anymore. It gives me anxiety. I don't have the time. It's not what I want to do. I've done 4 glorious plays in 5 years. It has been a perfect run, and if we keep it going, you'll be with the many talented performers that populate this area. But also, performing sucks poops, folks. At best, you get to learn some craft and create some happiness, but also, you can accidentally look like a total jackass. Oh, I've done that to people, sure. What director hasn't? Had a vision of something that wasn't executed, so you're left with something flawed and broken and functional from which to move forward. If I had a theater, we would be open every night, offering free popcorn and water, absurdly expensive candy. It would be a performance center, so there would be a focus on theater, dance, and music, but not above including film, especially as it relates to interdisciplinary media studies. What a wild ride, though, right? My first stage role was as a pornographer in 9th grade. What a weird thing theater is. Macbeth did it. Just say Macbeth as much as you want in the theater, kids. No way that's gonna come to bite you on your ass over a sprawling career and then toddler starts. No! Carry on. I don't need to perform on stage anymore. I'm so wildly successful in virtually every other way. It's sad, somewhat, that my most legendary performances are not recorded because of absurd property laws. And of course, those that are probably on VHS. And the kids these days, they don't know how to transfer the VHS without demagnetizing it with their awful fields. Sally Fields. See, normally you make a pile of brain salad and then sort of sort it and mix it into somewhat cogent parts and then create several drafts. But I don't think there's enough time for that. Not if we want to get the tight hour and a half, no intermission. Maybe an hour 20. Have we set those parameters yet? Those hopes and dreams? I dream of winning the Pulitzer Prize in drama, but that only involves writing and then having produced a play. It does not include performing in it. And in fact, historically, very few performing playwrights have succeeded. Except, of course, the immortal Tyler Perry. Not even going to Google that. If a joke lands, it lands. Bury it where it lands. I tried to avoid being morbid for this entire piece, but I think we need to address it. I think we need to do something very real and very unpleasant and feel just awful about it. And then we're going to just release that into the universe. As all things, a certain amount of energy can be absorbed, and then we are left to determine where that energy goes. So instead of this rambling, unedited brain salad, I'm going to plumb the absolute depths of the awful, the horrible, sad things I know. And it's going to be just awful. And we will be awful together, and then we are going to let it go into the universe, and it will be okay. We are all going to be okay, shall be our rallying cry. For even the dead are okay, since they could otherwise have been eaten by those dinosaurs, had the tables not been turned on that asteroid. If those dumb fucking lizards had just invented a space program. Millions of years down there eating grasses and one another. For what? I worked for Kevin Cease as a mortician's assistant for 6 years. The possibility of working for Cease came up during a production of Mice and Men, in which Kevin was Lenny and I was George. Lenny gets shot in the end. Spoiler alert. In the end, rather than risk Lenny going to prison or being lynched by a posse, George does the humane thing and gets Lenny all excited about going to live on the rabbit farm of their dreams before shooting him in the back of the head, where the skull meets the spine. For the performance, I used a prop pistol, and on opening night, it did not go off. Click. I attempted to rack another round into the chamber, but again, nothing. Click. So I left. Rather than yelling, "Blammo, dead ski," or "pistol whipping Lenny to death," I just walked off. Of course, Lenny followed. That was the night that Lenny got away. Frankly, I like our version better. Soon after that, I would start working for Cease primarily as a driver delivering the dead. My relationship with death truly began at age 6 with the Challenger disaster. That live television messed me up. A lot of people of my generation retain vivid memories of our teachers trying to explain what horrifying thing had just happened. I couldn't sleep for a few months. I would get myself to sleep at night because my thoughts of death would eventually lead to a solution to end death. I believed then that in the future, science and medicine, they would eventually develop an inoculation, a vaccination against death. Such a concept has been developed, or conceived but not developed. I wish they would get on it. It would be the best way to put Kevin Cease out of business. I would think of the Challenger often over the course of my life, and the more I learned about it, the more horrified I became. Experts that have studied the disaster believe that the crew survived the breakup. The disaster is inaccurately called an explosion. In reality, the craft suffered catastrophic disintegration. But the crew cabin survived the breakup and would have experienced a 3-minute ride on a parabolic arc, unable to control everything before impacting the Atlantic Ocean at terminal velocity, being drilled to the floor of the Atlantic at over 300 miles per hour. I can imagine more horrible deaths, but it's hard and not fun. Mortician's assistant is a title that I gave myself, like most titles that existed at Cease as a driver. The hours were flexible, the pay was respectable, and for 6 years I drove bodies thousands of miles. At first, I called myself a freelance body delivery man, but that was problematic for several reasons. First, it should be the gender-neutral freelance body delivery person. Second, it looks really weird on a resume. And finally, it wasn't applicable once I was put on the payroll. It was around that time that I started to refer to myself as a mortician's assistant. Whatever the made-up title, the snappy name tag is everything. It's the legitimacy you need when the police pull you over with a body in the back of your minivan. The police never pulled me over. I drive very safely. What's the point in speeding when you're being paid by the hour? I never hit a deer. I had one terrifying flat tire. I was passed by Dale Earnhardt Jr. once. He got lucky. One time I delivered more than one body at a time. I only drove the hearse once and I hated it. 50% of the vehicle is a blind spot. It's like driving in a pillbox. Every other time I drove a minivan. In fact, before trying it, I didn't know I had the ability to move dead people around. The first time that I saw a deceased stranger, it was my job to pick up their dead body with the help of a mortician, put it on a zipper gurney, and return it to the funeral home. I remember seeing my first dead stranger and feeling reality pull up behind my eyelids, and language turned into a Charlie Brown adult. And then I snapped back to reality. And I was asked, "Are you okay?" And I said yes, and I was. As a bizarre confession, I will admit having an urge to take a bite out of the corpse in the back. Now, that's a surprising urge, and I just assume it's part of being exposed to such a surreal experience. But for one thing, getting involved, of course, is both strictly against the rules and not recommended. Later, I would unpack that idea, pat it on the head, and throw it back into the subconscious with the rest of the insanity. I don't know how many people I delivered. Certainly more than dozens, probably not more than 100. When you are born, someone delivers you, and when you die, you are also delivered. The dead come from Minneapolis, St. Paul. They come from the Fargo airport. They come from distant hospitals and funeral homes, and somebody has to go to those places and bring those dead folks home. Maybe you're lucky enough to die at home. Even then, someone will come for you and carry you to where you need to go. Much of life and being human is avoiding thoughts of death. Death has always been a weird subject, and we've always made up weird stuff to cope with it. Many of you may call me crazy or mistaken, but I believe that one night I saw a ghost, and that has radically altered how I see death. I witnessed a phenomenon that cannot be explained to me by reality or a rational understanding of science. No matter if you believe me or not, I believe that there's some sort of afterlife. I don't know if that's a relief to you or not, but I tell you in case you wanted to know. A lot of people claim to know what happens when you die. I have virtually no clue, except maybe you can become a ghost. Physically, when I die, I'm going to be cremated and my ashes spread on Lake Bemidji. I want to pollute that water and force people to drink me. If our dog Leroy is passed at that point, we will be spread together. Heck, any of you who are dead and want to come can come. We'll have a big old pile of ashes just toxicking up the whole river. We really are just dirt. Compress and spin dirt over a long enough period of time and you get the house cat. If you take anything away from this, and as a mercy to those you leave behind, write a will, plan your funeral, and get your affairs in order. There's a thing called Swedish death cleaning, but there's also just mercifully and practically unburdening those you leave behind. Don't leave your loved ones without a set of instructions, clear wishes, fond farewells. They're going to have enough to deal with, what with you being dead, as disco. It may be that moving dead people around has permanently altered my understanding and perception of life. For the sake of time and decency, I've left out most of the unpleasant parts, but there was unpleasantness. Experiences that no sane person could walk away from untouched. If that is the price that I pay to understand the stakes of the game, to remain somewhat woke, then I pay it gladly. My minivan is full of life now. The universe gives us death, but we have the power to create and nurture life. We have the power even to laugh in the face of death. And that is how we win. That is how we find a cure to death. We keep spinning this space dirt into doctors and scientists and caregivers until we defeat it. That is our constant battle, and we are all in it together. I want to share some unpleasantness now. There was a picture that haunted me and haunts me still. It's a black and white picture of some Polish women clutching their babies in a line, waiting to be executed by Nazi soldiers. I see that image, and I want to be able to fight, to design and build a time craft and travel back and to save them, to be the savior their God failed to be for them at that time. Because in a world that was at all just or sane, people could not shoot other people and roll them into mass graves. But there are still the images. The gas children of Syria, the red line that was crossed and ignored. We decide to commit war crimes of our own, and from the face-down baby on the Mediterranean, we see a different face-down baby stuffed into a shirt, yearning to breathe free. I would be lying to you all if I told you that I wasn't game theorizing, liberating some child concentration camps. Because we say never again, or don't look away, or never forget to always remember, but those are really just words. Words can't unkill babies. Only actions can possibly prevent that. Words are the unfortunate victims of fascism. We found the character limit to human attention. It is 250 characters, everybody. Surely a capable group of time clones should have liberated Auschwitz. Our tent camps aren't Auschwitz, but with hindsight, we can forestall that eventuality. What is the end game to these destroyed and genocided people? How are we to turn our swords into plowshares before we murder everyone with unsustainable consumption? How can I get a timecraft, a laser gun, and a kill team to vaporize some Nazi scum and prevent some crimes against humanity? Can it be both? Can't we cooperate and collaborate and tailor down these edifices of power before they kill us all wholesale to make a few trillion? If you loaned me $1 trillion tomorrow, I would gladly pay you $2 trillion on Tuesday. One other thing you should know about me is my tenacious commitment to getting elected to something. I ran for mayor of Bemidji in 2004 and 2008, and I was a registered write-in candidate for governor in 2018 during the midterm. I'm examining my options for the 2020 election. One reason I'm so bad at politics is that I have little to no money. I've accepted probably a lifetime less than $300 between all of these three campaigns. It doesn't buy signs, it doesn't buy airtime, it doesn't buy print. These are the things that campaigns spend money on to win. Someone once told me that they thought that politics was a popularity contest, as if that was supposed to be some sort of grand revelation. Yes! It is quite literally a popularity contest, where the wealthiest people get to spend virtually unlimited amounts of their money buying popularity. In the trenches, all we have is the power of the press relief and these crap arts. Throw a news conference on Wednesday and crap on the floor of McDonald's on Thursday and see what sort of traction you get with either event. Spend all your time getting money to produce snappy videos to be fast-forwarded through on DVRs at home. By all means, do that. What is the point of any of these games in a world where money is speech? Oh, I get it, Citizens United. Your argument is awful and destructive and logical. Rich people don't have time to campaign for their candidates, you see. They're too busy making money to support the candidates that they need. Otherwise, you are infringing on the rights of those people, those poor, delicious rich people. So supple. So digestible. I feel bad for them, unable to take the time to campaign, let alone register those donations with the campaign body. No. Let's make those unlimited donations secret, or people might be discouraged to donate. And who wants that? See First Amendment v. Rich People. So yeah, of course in a world where money is speech, Donald Trump is president. Of course. This is a president only money could buy. And those who threw money at the wild card, got their investment back on that gamble. Oh yes, they got their islands in the sky. Meanwhile, we get our mercury fish sandwiches. Eat that, plebs. With politics, as with all things in my life, the true failure is to quit. I watched footage of Hunter S. Thompson after he lost his run for sheriff of Aspen, and he was just broken to the process. He was defeated, and he decided to quit campaigning for office and just throw those energies elsewhere. And he took those sweet experiences and just threw them into the dirt. I've learned 1,000 times more from my failures than I have from any of my perceived successes. Success is just an existential word that aligns itself with whatever your intention was in creating or doing something. You work as a reporter, fantastic. Are you good at it? Oh, you suck the chrome off a pearl-handled .38 revolver every night while listening to Goodbye Horses to get yourself to sleep? Well, you shouldn't do that. It's bad for the barrel. It's also very bad for your muzzle. Also, maybe you should consider being and or doing something else. Consider that if you are miserable in life, that you are doing it wrong, and that this very moment could be your turning point. I think this is around our tight hour 20. Let me thank some people. I have a lot of people worthy of thanking, and with only a page remaining in this work, I'm not going to get to all of them. Because I could not be here to bore you without the love and support of a glorious network of heroes. I want to thank my mother, Donna Liend, née Stenerson, without whom I would not exist. I was only able to complete these works and this one with the support of my partner in crime, love, and art, Ruth Baker. My plays may never reach the level of greatness, but our children remain our most fantastic productions. The title of Best Friend is very divisive because it excludes and selects single people out in a group. So if I had to list some of my best friends in order of appearance, they would be Zach Holmes, Jesse Whiting, and Andrew Clemens. These men are the finest artists I've ever known and the best friends anyone could ask for. Each have contributed, supported, and sacrificed in their own ways to make not only this fine art, but also to keep me a relatively capable, sane, and somewhat functioning member of society. I would humbly and deeply like to thank the cast and crews for these productions. You don't get to submit for the PP for D without raising a curtain, and that curtain would not rise without you. I would like to thank my stage manager, right hand, and brother Jared Liend. He isn't here tonight. He got a real job, everybody. In the best case scenario, stage managing is a thankless, underpaid, and loathsome position. Our shows are never the best case scenario. Spoiler alert. Bless you all. +1. The author would like to acknowledge the many pop culture references in this piece as both dated and boring. Please don't sue me! But if you do, please wait until after I get the $500 trillion robot check. I, being poor, have only my crap plays. I have laid my crap plays below your feet. Tread softly / carefully, for you tread on my crap. I would like to thank higher education and the fine arts. Many people of my generation and beyond poo-poo the liberal and fine arts as a useless waste of time and money. But those people probably listen to music at some point in their miserable lives. Try to dance, however unsuccessfully. Although statistically few attend the theater anymore, those who do must enjoy it. For some dumb reason. The author is grateful to have read the many plays, texts, and articles that have supported and advanced my understanding on a wide range of interdisciplinary subjects. Finally, the author would like to once again acknowledge the planet is on fire and dying. For reals, kids! We must start doing something. I used to think we could recycle our way out of the problem, but the numbers are not looking good. I don't know what it's going to take. I thought maybe theater was produced more sustainably, but as it turns out, 70% of the carbon production is only produced by like 100 companies or so. And so, let me clarify, we should never do this, wink, wink, but maybe someone should just evacuate those places and burn them to the ground. Extreme perhaps, with those sweet insurance monies. Surely you could create some more sustainable ventures, recycled solar panel factories, carbon-negative hydrocarbon production facilities, hydroponic growing centers. Really anything but a factory that burns our garbage into the upper atmosphere is what we're looking for. Even if it isn't climate change, it could be a meteorite or super volcano or doomsday virus. You know, I know you know. I acknowledge you know. Go now, gentle mind slaves. Go tell it on the mountain. The end.